Okay, can you hear us, Kalina?
Yes.
Okay, sweet.
All right. Hey, Kalina.
Good afternoon.
All right. So we're here. We'll call this meeting to order. This is the Human Relations Commission meeting for today, December the 15th. So the first order of business is is everybody, except for Mary Aaron, well, maybe you have also, taken a look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah. Yes.
Any changes, additions, things you didn't like? I don't know. Okay. Motion to accept the minutes as written?
So moved.
Second? Okay.
Aye.
Got that. So, next is public comment. Do we have anybody? We don't have anybody here live for public comments, but do we have anybody virtually?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. All right. Do we have any other visitors or anything like that? Tonight.
Not tonight.
Okay.
Too cold. Too cold.
All right. So we'll get to agenda items. We have a new commissioner, and maybe we can, if we have a chance, if you can just introduce yourself and give us a few sentences or words about who you are and what you're interested in doing here, and maybe we all can also introduce ourselves to you.
I would love that, yeah. I'm Erin Norris. I've lived in Lawrence since 2003.
Oh.
So I've been here for a minute. I love living here. I work for the state of Kansas, kind of overseeing rights for people with disabilities, and just have a lot of background in serving vulnerable populations, and I'm excited to be here and see what we can do.
Awesome.
That's terrific. I think we can use your experience and
Yeah.
expertise here.
Good,
Welcome, welcome.
thank you.
Okay. Renato?
Yeah, my name's Renato. Moved to Lawrence 2023 from New York. Seen that there was an availability for this board, jumped on it. I like to give back to the community. Why not? You know, my thinking is always like, if you wanna change things, you gotta be the change. So I work for the Air Force over in Topeka, Air National Guard, full time there. Volunteer here and there for the Special Olympics of Kansas. Do a few other things for my church, my son's school, but yeah, just here to make a difference.
I'm Kevin Elliott. I was born and raised here in Lawrence. I have a background as an activist, a lot of HIV/AIDS, LGBTQIA activism. Worked with migrant farm workers. I'm on the board of directors for Independence Incorporated here in Lawrence, and do a lot of outreach and advocacy for people living without homes.
Great. I'm Irving Koo. I've been in Lawrence since June 2022, so relatively recent transplant. I've been transplanted from Arkansas, of all places. I'm a retired psychiatrist. When I came here to Lawrence, I Googled volunteer opportunities within the county, and a few of them came up. So this is one of the things that I'm involved in, other activities within the community, usually surrounding kids. I'm also kind of volunteering in the mental health arena for the county, as well as for the mental health clinic here. So just happy to be here. So great. And welcome. I think
Thank you.
I think your background will be great. We've been begging for some diversity here. This is good. All right. Next on the agenda. So the Human Relations Division case update. I know that I was at a meeting 3 to 5, and when I got out of the meeting at 5, I looked at my emails, and there it was. I guess it was an update from Zach Fidel, who's an attorney for who works for the Human Relations Commission. And he sent us an update of cases that they're currently working on, and these are complaints from the community where there's a sense that their rights have been violated. And so I know that when I first got onto this committee, I thought that that was one of the things that we'd be doing quite a bit of, but I got kind of learned differently. So we do take a look at that, but I think it sounds like it would be only rarely where we would be involved. But we've got the update nevertheless. So there it is.
And I believe Kalina had also forwarded that to you all as well.
Yeah, she did, but just within the past couple of hours, I think, maybe. I don't remember when I got the email, but it was pretty late.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure if everybody has had a chance to review this, but it looks like there are a number of housing complaints.
Looked like there was a busy few months.
Yeah.
And I know that might be hard to read on the screen. I'm trying to pull it up here. Let me know if you would like to have it read out or have any questions about any of them, I guess.
Yes, there was I think, as I read it before, there was a summary judgment for the city on a case of a property manager that was accused of violating, refusing to rent a property because I think it didn't want to accept HUD vouchers. So that actually is moving into court, is that right?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, please.
Moving into court.
Yeah, I think there was a verdict where the city was successful in enforcing violations of source of income violation. Well, I'm trying to pull it up. I think I opened up the wrong email from him. So update. Okay, yeah, this was it. So yeah, it looked like he said, as far as sharing information, first, we had a victory on November 6th when Douglas County District Court ruled in favor of the city's motion for summary judgment in a case we brought to enforce the anti-discrimination provisions of Chapter 10 regarding source of income. In the case, City of Lawrence versus River City Homes, a property manager was accused of violating city code by refusing to rent a property on Mound Ridge Court to a tenant who wished to use Section 8 vouchers. And he further explains, impartially granting the city's motion for summary judgment and denying defendant's motion, the court found that the property manager violated city ordinance section 10-111.2 by denying housing, and that the property owner's rights were not violated. The case could proceed to trial on the remaining charges regarding the property owner's written policy, or it could result in a settlement before trial. But the ruling by the court resolved the biggest issue in favor of the city. The city will seek attorney fees and appropriate damages in either option. And then he kind of go on to list the other cases that have transpired since the last Human Relations Commission meeting
Right. And
that are under investigation.
yeah, most of them are under investigation. There's one where the draft complaint is being drafted, but most are actually being looked at right now.
Yes.
Let me see, housing complaint about an accommodation for a person with disability. I got new glasses, I can see really well.
I just broke my better glass. These are my struggle glasses.
Okay. Specifically, an elevator was out of operation, and tenant could not access their housing. Okay, that. Employment complaint about different treatment in a workplace based on sex, gender, under investigation. That's good. Housing complaint about a landlord who refused to rent to someone using housing choice vouchers. Investigation complete. Proceeded through conciliation and possible court action. I think that's probably the one that we just looked at. Housing complaint by a person who believes their landlord did not renew their lease because of the tenant's number of children, family status, familial status. Okay. Under investigation, housing complaint related to a service animal being ordered out of a housing unit. Report received and complaints being drafted. Employment complaint about disability, discrimination, or retaliation under investigation. Housing complaint about a deposit not being returned. Seeking more information. They're not sure whether this falls under Chapter 10. Could be a civil matter. I could see that. And then housing complaint by a person who has disability and who was initially denied housing for potentially discriminatory reasons. After discussion with property manager, the property changed course and offered appropriate housing. Case resolved. Good. Okay. So yeah, I think it has been the last few months that we'll get a report like that from Mr. Friedel, kind of updating us on where we're at with the active cases here. All right.
And in certain situations, when it goes through a certain level, there is a possibility that some of those cases may come to us for us to
Right.
review.
Okay.
But that's very rare.
Right. Hasn't happened yet. but it could. All right.
Is there any action for us to take on these
I don't.
for this to not happen again? If there's like a pattern,
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
is there any action for us to do on these? So like an event like this doesn't occur again, or to mitigate it?
So I think maybe to what you all have previously discussed surrounding trainings or promotion of the Human Relations Commission. I know we discussed, and it's already on the agenda to talk about what trainings may look like to be able to kind of get before certain organizations and neighborhood associations and those kinds of things. Perhaps with more just speculation, of course, but perhaps with higher level of awareness of this advisory board and some of the ordinances such as Chapter 10, if more people kind of knew that and were familiar with it, might be less likely to be in violation of it. So I think that's something to maybe give consideration to.
Yeah.
But as far as the current format of how this is presented, if there's something you feel like, we have additional questions, or can we see this presented this way or have more information, I think that's something we can follow up with the city attorney's office with.
I can see it going either way, both ways. You educate the landlords,
Yeah.
and then maybe there are less cases, but you educate the public, and maybe there'll be more complaints because they weren't aware that maybe they could complain about stuff like this, or wouldn't know where to complain to.
Right.
But I think that's a good idea. You get data like this, trying to figure out what can we do with this
Yeah.
instead of just kind of sitting on it.
I mean, the education piece is important for the property managers and the tenants.
Right. And people here, the majority of them are
Yeah.
complaints. So
Right.
maybe that's an audience to target.
But it seems like people do know where to go, you know?
Yeah, I think at some point people will get pointed to the right direction sometime.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm included on some of the emails where people are inquiring about if they feel as if they experience some level of discrimination, and sometimes the Human Relations Division, the branch of the city attorney's office that kind of looks into does the investigations. Sometimes they'll point people in the right direction if it's not governed under Chapter 10, such as one of the examples in the 8 cases here was potentially discriminatory, but we're looking farther into it.
Right.
Sometimes those things happen. But I think also related to source of income, that is a relatively newer protected class that a lot of people might still be unaware of. So there might be some opportunity there to kind of help elevate awareness about what that means as far as source of income. Because all cities and places, it's not as popular in many places as opposed to general housing discrimination. So many people might be unaware of what that looks like because I think right before the restructuring of the advisory boards, that was one of the last projects the previous human relations commissioners had wanted to tackle, and kind of breaking out what's included in that source of income discrimination, especially when you give consideration to different ways people may have income, whether that's W-2, whether that's alimony, whether that's if you're indigenous and you receive money from other sources or federal, whatever that looks like. So, or college students, they receive consistent funding from parents to kind of help subsidize their living. That can be considered a source of income. So, what might discrimination look like? So, I think there might be some opportunity for some education in that realm.
I agree. I could see a great opportunity for us to team up with like the housing authority who presents the vouchers to make sure that the people they present vouchers to know their rights. I think you hit on a great idea.
Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion, thoughts?
Do we want follow up on any of these cases? Like specific attention? Just spitballing. Just
Yeah.
throwing an idea out there.
I mean, I'll each month before each meeting, I email Zach and say, hey, can you send
Yeah.
us a review? Are there ones that if there are ones that you feel as if you'd like a little bit more detail than just the one line, just let me know and I can ask him for more detail.
Okay.
And give you. All right. Anything else? Any other discussion about this? Next on the agenda is the Homeless Bill of Rights and further discussion. This was brought up a couple of months ago during our last meeting. And Kevin, you might want to, since this was your baby.
Okay. Can I get one of those?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we just received this, so I haven't had a chance to review it. But you can just kind of come up.
Yeah.
Aaron, how this all started and where we're going with it and where we could be going with it.
Yeah, this started with actually some public comment that came to us from
Yeah, it was
Howard Callahan from
we worked at
Bert Nash.
Bert Nash in there.
Yeah, and he talked about different ways, different agencies and organizations he responded to people with who are unhoused receiving services, uneven treatment. That there were no consistency between agencies or even within the same agency in services. And he said that even when the city responded to certain situations, the policies were not always clear and concise. And that sometimes there was at least a perception that that people who are unhoused may not always get fair and equal treatment. Whether or not that was under the law, it's not for me to say. I don't know. But it brought up our conversation that followed up, brought up the idea, the concept that there might be an opportunity to create a Bill of Rights for the unhoused community, to create a balanced and fair approach for people receiving services in Lawrence. And so I started to take, and I apologize to the commission for being slow on the uptake, but to see what other communities have done. And I went and reached out and spoke to some people, and there was a lot of different things that a lot of different communities have done to create unhoused bills of rights. Talk about public use, equal treatment, privacy and protection, access to service, due process, freedom of movement. And there's different things going on in different communities. Some of it is legislative, some of it is policy, some of it is done on an organizational level, some of it's done through legislative bodies. So there's a lot of different ways it can go. I didn't want to decide what was better. I just found out what had happened in different communities. This is real broad research. This isn't very specific. The email that I sent to Kalina has links, so you can use those links to go into more depth, to look into specific legislation that different communities have enacted. Some of the things that I saw in there that I personally am going to point out is, for example, in Lawrence, there is discussion that we provide certain levels of services to people who we decide have a residential requirement. And there's discussion in other communities as to whether or not that restricts freedom of movement. So that's part of the discussion we can have. Things like that are part of what this conversation could entail. There's discussion that, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I don't want to decide where this discussion is going to go or what people are going to think. What I see is a lot of opportunity to create a fair and balanced process for determining how services in our community are funded, how services in our community are provided, how the city responds to people in need in our community. And I want to make sure that what we do in a way that is equitable to people of color, to people who are LGBTQIA, to people who are indigenous, to people who are victims of domestic violence. And there's been reports that hasn't always been the case. And I think there's opportunity to improve. And this is one way that we can look at improving how we serve our community.
Discussion, thoughts?
I'm still trying to dissect it.
Yeah. Yeah. Haven't-
Yeah, and the information's fresh, and that's my fault. I should have provided this information about 3 months ago, and like I said, I apologize to the commission for my tardiness.
It could be because the public commenter, it's been a number of months since he was here, or didn't quite understand everything that he was referring to. But remember, so what I'm trying to figure out is, what are we not doing for the unhoused? Or what is the community not providing or not doing for the unhoused?
Well, I want to be careful not to speak for him.
Yeah.
Some of the comments he referred to, I'll go specifically to freedom of movement.
Right. I remember him talking about that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Decisions made on services provided to people who are perceived to be newer to Lawrence, and how that determination is made, have been perceived to be, in some communities, service providers and people who are unhoused, arbitrary. Exactly how do you just determine who is a resident of Lawrence in a community that do not have access to documents, consistent access to documents? If you're fleeing domestic violence, how do you prove that? What do you do to say that you're in a safe place? If the policy of Lawrence is to send you back to where you came from, are you being sent back into harm's way? Is that really the best policy? If you have freedom of travel, which is which some people have said could be considered a U.S. constitutional right, is being sent back a violation of that policy? Is one of the questions being asked. We have Haskell Haskell Indian College here, which makes us a unique destination for indigenous population. If you're indigenous, you have access to resources here, native health. If you're unhoused and indigenous, are you sent to a place where you don't have access to health care and those types of resources? Is that really, the best thing? Those are questions that are raised. I don't have the answers to those questions, so I'm not trying to say what is right and is not right. But those are all questions that weren't asked when we decide how we determine to triage people who are unhoused when determining how to allocate our resources. And so it's not a simple black or white. Have you been in Lawrence for more than 2 years? None of those questions were asked when we determined our residency policy. And so it's been siloed to one person deciding, do you meet my qualifications for do you live in Lawrence? There's no neutral system for determining residency. And it's not just residency. That's just one question. There's determining what resources are available, how those resources are allocated. There's
But residency seems to be a key thing, because I think the sense is, if you're not a resident, then we can't really provide services for you.
right. And there's a legitimate reason to say that. So I'm not saying that that's not a legitimate question either. I don't have the answer to that. But there's a lot of questions about service provision based on domestic violence, on substance abuse issues, on color, on indigenous population, on criminal history, on immigration status, that should have some sort of rhyme or reason that aren't necessarily being addressed in our community. And a Bill of Rights that lay those out, how those are processed, how those are examined, that create a community of people that address those issues, built by the people of Lawrence, that follow the guidelines of the city priorities and policies, I think might be helpful.
I guess several questions in my head is like, okay, so since we don't know a lot, who can we actually ask or talk to who would know more about those particular issues? And if we do a Bill of Rights, it doesn't feel as if it's us that do. There are other organizations certainly that need to be involved, if they also have the will to be able to, if they see this as a good idea.
Yeah, who's the gatekeeper of like that data that you're speaking about? Like,
Well, there's the people. There's two ways we can look at that. There's the people who are in charge of the information and the money, and there's the people on the ground who face the situation day to day. Both those parties, I think, should be involved in this, in my opinion. The gatekeepers of the data and the money would be the city, mostly the city.
well, we need to know how many
And-
people are
and the-
requesting resources and
And
getting denied.
and the gatekeeper and the people on the ground who see what's happened day to day would be Bert Nash, housing, Lawrence Community Shelter, Douglas County Citizens Committee on Alcoholism.
Yeah.
There's about eight or nine organizations that
All of the service organizations.
Yeah.
that deal with that on a daily basis, that could give us real day-to-day true life experience and that received the money from the city that can tell us what happens day to day.
I will share by way of resource, I guess, that on the city's website for the there is a report for a place for everyone, and then the report it looked like it's a 20-page report. A collective plan says our plan to end homelessness in Lawrence and Douglas counties called a place for everyone. And I think to what you mentioned, Vice Chair, about there look like there's about 16 organizations that's collaborating to kind of help with the ending of houselessness. Says the city of Lawrence and Douglas County are grateful to be joined in this work by the following agencies that reflect the housing and homelessness stakeholders in the community, and it kind of lists,
Yeah.
16 or so organizations. But in there, it kind of also unpacks the different types of housing challenges. It has it broken out into like 7 categories. Everything from sanctuary camping to emergency shelter to transitional housing to supportive housing to affordable rental housing, affordable home ownership, and market rate housing. So I think there might be some information in here that might help to kind of address some of the things that you're discussing, to kind of start with some of the data piece, I think, that you mentioned, Commissioner Renato. So that might be a good, an additional resource to kind of help flush out some of the information. So I can try to see if I can get that out to you all as well.
So representatives from those, not from all 16 organizations, because that becomes too unwieldy, but from those communities that serve directly, as well as from the city.
So it seems like there's already an initiative, or am I mistaken?
The organization right now is from the top down. I think we need representation that has the point of view, not from the money, from where the money should go, but that represents the community side, the people being served, their point of view, as opposed to the city's point of view.
When you say the people who are being served, you're talking about those who are unhoused?
Yes.
How many of them actually want help or seeking resources actively?
How many of them are seeking resources actively?
I'm saying there's
Several.
They don't have.
Okay. I've been doing direct service in the community for about 3 years. Probably, and I am 35 years nonprofit experience, but I'm not an expert in that field. I'm trying to think what I can say.
My experience when I was working at the VA was that I couldn't categorize or generalize unhoused people into like one compartment. There are all sorts of different ones. There are all sorts of people who, were unhoused because their PTSD was really bad, or versus those who were unhoused because they just could not find employment. And were not able to hold employment for various reasons, either temperament, substances, other things. There were men, women, and they had different needs. Some actually wanted help, others not so much. I mean, it's really weird. In the community that I was in, there was these guys out there, and they would say, "I'm a veteran, give me money." And I would go over there and say, "Are you a veteran? Here's my card. I can get you housing. Okay, I'm the chief of mental health at a large VA hospital 2 miles down from you." I never got anybody who contacted me in order to. I said, "I can get you housing. I can get you housing like right now." but that didn't happen. And I think that, I'm not sure why it didn't happen, but I don't think it was because they didn't want it. I just didn't know enough about them in order to have a sense of how to approach them.
What I can say is I've been to 3 different meetings where they've tried to create what I call consumer unions, where the people who, and these are specifically people who lived in camps at the time, outdoor camps, tent camps. There were large meetings, maybe out of 250 people, maybe 30. I consider that large, more than 10%, that would attend. The situation was it's difficult to sustain because the struggle is finding food and a safe place to sleep before you can focus on activism and self-advocacy. So it generally didn't become sustainable, but the interest was there. I saw the interest there for wanting to advocate for themselves.
When I'm looking at your document, what I see is not specific to any particular individual, but for the whole group. Public space use, right to use sidewalks, parks, public transport, privacy and property, access to services, due process. I think homelessness is criminalized nowadays.
Yeah.
Very much so, and decriminalizing that might be. So this feels like it's more a general statement as opposed to looking at each particular person's any individual's problems.
Well, and I didn't make it my opinion. I just based on what was done. My opinion might have been, would have been very different, but it wasn't. I wasn't doing my opinion. I was doing what was done.
But these are all kind of like.
Well, I think that's good because we got to have like an unbiased view.
Yeah, I mean, these are all addressed towards a broader population. So I'm sorry, Kevin, are you saying that there could be more than what's been done in these other areas? Or did Lawrence lack something like this and we needed to duplicate something like this for this area?
Well, I was just doing a summary of what has been done. We're uniquely Lawrence. We're not tied to what's been done.
Right, but when we're talking about a Bill of Rights, I'm not sure how much different will.
I'm not trying to lead us anywhere. I'm just saying we have freedom.
Okay.
We based on a discussion we've had before, some people see this commission as writing laws or
Right.
and others see it as advising for policy. And there's just a lot of different ways we can go. That it's really up to us to decide.
I guess another question I have in my mind is having a Bill of Rights, a homeless Bill of Rights, per se. How effective is that how much teeth does that have in terms of making sure that these individuals aren't discriminated against, because, you know, a lot of these feel as if they're kind of on the books already. Maybe.
I think we'd have to go through them individually, be like, all right, what ordinances are there for public space use, and is there any different wording we could put in there if it's not already all inclusive?
Well, and some of that is some lightly addressed in the reports. It's had different effectiveness in different communities. Some of it has little or no effectiveness in some communities, and some communities have sunk their teeth into it, and it's have made it more impactful in the law, or made it part of funding of the police department, things like that. So that how we write it, and whether or not we make it legislative with teeth, and whether, you know, how much we follow up with education, whether or not the city follows up with funding priorities, things like that, all impact its effectiveness.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
It's a good question.
Well, what we had talked about was the idea of collaborating with the Housing Commission, and initiating a subcommittee that is as one option. I realize that creates meeting time issues, open records laws issues, all that. And I think if we do that, we would have to do like a study group, find out exactly what, you know, do research, find out more precise. This is really general knowledge, general information here. This isn't precise, and it's not precise to the city of Lawrence. Find out exactly where the gaps lie, more specifically, because right now we're going off conversation with one person, or a couple people. Find out exactly where the problems lie, what we can do about them, and how to address them. And I think that's a process that would probably take months, if not a year. That's one option. It's not, I don't like to work slow, so it's not my favorite option, but but I think it's how things work in this system. But there are other options. We could continue on our own with this group. We could I'm just throwing out ideas. I don't have an agenda, because I'm certainly open to other things too. But if you haven't learned already, I usually have something to say.
Well, yeah, and that's really much appreciated. I think being able to, okay, so I struggle with the getting more information, because I think we need more information to make this happen. I don't think that any of us can just go back home and write a Bill of Rights and say, hey, we should like show this to other organizations and see what they think, which is something that we could do. But I think we need to, yeah, we can look at key organizations to be able to contact them and discuss with them whether they feel as if this is a need. I mean, if they feel as if, no, we've got that covered already,
Yeah. Well, I think we need to see if any of this is addressed already
Well, that would,
in the ordinances.
but what is addressed? I mean, we need to determine
The
what
public
needs to be
space use,
addressed.
the privacy and property, the due process.
So,
Well, and I agree with that, but part of that is whether whether it is covered and whether it's being addressed are two different issues too. I mean, it may be covered, but it may not be being addressed.
right, but is the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights is the way to address it, or is it really, how do we, how are those particular rights kind of ensured? The execution of how these rights are not denied, how does that actually happen?
Informing people of their rights,
Education.
education, yeah.
Okay.
I guess I would be curious what the 16 group, the ground people are pushing for, what they want. They would know way more than what probably any of us would, except maybe you.
They probably have data as well to back up their claims or.
And they might already have stuff in draft form, sitting around that they'd be willing to take point on.
What I can suggest is I reach out to Howard, since he's the one who approached us with this, and ask him to suggest a list of people to. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I'm just thinking, okay, so he was the original person who brought this up.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible for us to invite him to try to have him clarify? Not as someone who comes in with 5 minutes, but someone, again, who comes in that we invite to talk to us about in order to clarify his initial observations.
And I think that can be an option as well. I also think maybe to what you were getting at, houselessness and all the various challenges that come with that does require a certain level of, in my opinion, sort of an interdisciplinary approach to a multifaceted sort of a challenge, right? So it can be large, this sort of ideal of a homeless bill of rights. I think if we can try to, or if you all can see, hey, here are the more pressing needs, and here's what's not being addressed directly, or here's a gap, and here's why there's a gap, to what you were kind of getting at earlier. Maybe there's something that's legally on the books, but maybe not being enforced, and trying to figure out the why behind that. Is that a resource issue? Is that a lack of staffing? Is that a lack of proper partnerships, or just a certain group was not addressing it? So I think kind of narrowing that down so that it doesn't seem as gargantuan or certain large, I think that might be helpful to kind of get starting to make some incremental steps in the direction I think that you want to get to.
Well, I think what we can do then is invite Howard to ask what are the questions, not necessarily what are the answers. And then we as a group can start.
I don't think he knows the answers.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there would be a way to get, of course, Howard, because he brought it initially, and obviously Bert Nash would know a ton about this. But if there would be a way to get, maybe a couple other viewpoints from some of the other people working on this, so that we're not looking at just one mental health section.
Yeah, not with a lens.
Yeah. I would feel better if there's a little more representation from the groups that are doing that work. Because a lot of times they do coordinate together or have their own coalitions, but sometimes they're very big odds with each other about what they feel needs to happen.
Is there a homelessness coalition here in town?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, there is.
So yeah, I guess the combination of them, in addition to, I think there's some partnership also with the state related to the continuum of care. I know the city does like an annual sort of a point in time count of homelessness to try to get those numbers reduced and things of that nature. I don't know who's working on what specific sectors or portions of some of this. In my head, I've been sort of partly involved in or heard several conversations that's been happening, even with the city commissioners, for an example. So I know there's a balance, there's a bit of a dance, like with the camping, for an example. I know there was some, I think, I want to say federal law that got passed at one point about who can have what types of camps where, and I know that caused a big stir around the nation for some states and cities. So I know there's lots of different elements to it. So I think depending on which part there's more of a passion to address, might kind of help getting the ball rolling, I guess. But I guess in addition to, as what you mentioned about people's perceptions of roles on this advisory board, I still would try to make sure we keep it sort of narrowed to what does it mean as far as the Human Relations Commission and the roles, I guess,
Yeah.
of enforcing discrimination or preventing discrimination. So if it's, we think this is discriminatory based on ostracizing a certain, sector of our community, and that's why these things need to be addressed, I think that could be helpful as well.
So to address your concern, I think if we invited Misty, Howard, and someone from the the shelter, that would kind of hit the three main representatives of town.
Yeah, maybe so. I think, is there a specific sort of questions that you have in mind, though? I think the more you can have it sort of tailored, I think the more beneficial it'll be as far as having conversations surrounding it, tapping into their expertise, if you will. And we can communicate that via email as well, I guess, if
Yeah.
we need to give it some
Yeah.
thought and send an email out.
Yeah. It feels as if, as well-meaning as it is, it feels almost too big for this group. And to narrow it down in terms of what we're supposed to be looking at in terms of what we're charged with, which is basically discriminatory practices in housing, employment, public services, that kind of thing. Is this population currently being discriminated against in all three of those? My guess would be, yeah, probably. But I would want to know more about that. And again, is a Bill of Rights, is that the way to go, or is there something else we can do to try to help with this situation? And the first thing that comes into my mind is the whole education thing. Okay. Anyway, let's.
Well, and two things. One, I agree with you that it's maybe beyond our scope, which is one of the reasons I wanted to partner with the housing council, because that would increase our scope.
Well,
And two is, could we talk about making being unhoused protected class?
yeah, maybe.
What's the protected classes again? Do we have the list?
I can try to see if I can pull it up here.
It's kind of
Based on
like
chapter 10.
age, gender, race, religion.
So it's like the categories are based on Chapter 10-101, Declaration of Policy for the Human Relations Commission, Article 1. The practice or policy of discrimination against persons by reason of race, sex, religion, color, national origin, age, ancestry, familial status, sexual orientation, disability, gender identity, source of income, or immigration status is a matter of concern to the city of Lawrence, since such discrimination not only threatens the rights and privileges of the inhabitants of the city, but also menaces the institution and foundation of the free democratic state. So it's those, however many number those are. So yeah. So those would be the categories as far as protected classes.
Was hairstyle added to that?
Yeah, hairstyle is proxy to race.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But that was one of the more recent updates as well to the Chapter 10.
So you're talking about including housing status as a protected class.
I'm not saying that I want to do that. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that could be on the table.
Okay. So my suggestion is to, and we get someone in here who knows more about this and what's going on, to discuss our, our ideas with them, our thoughts about the Bill of Rights, protected class, and kind of talk to them about how this all started and whether they have any thoughts about the directions that not just we, but we as a community can go. I mean, our job isn't here to end houselessness, much as we'd love to do that.
And and I don't think I'm talking about what services we provide. Just,
No, we're not. We're just saying that we don't want any services that they need, they shouldn't be denied because of the fact that they're without housing. So I'm sorry, your suggestion of who we can approach was which organization?
Lawrence Community Shelter, Bert Nash, and Misty Bosch Hastings, who's what's Misty's title?
I think the Director of Houseless Solutions for the City of Lawrence.
Oh, she might be one to approach.
So I believe what I was sort of reading off earlier related to a place for everyone, I think she kind of helped sort of launch some of that, if you will,
Okay.
or help take some of the lead on that.
So can we actually, I mean, I'm thinking, how do we initiate this? Can we actually write a letter as a group and send it to her and invite her here? Or are there other steps that have to be taken before that?
No, I think since she's for Misty at least, since she's a city employee, then it'll be the same thing as we kind of discussed before when requesting for a city employee to be in attendance at a meeting. We just have to kind of get that request, then I will have to submit that to the city manager, and the city managers will have to approve of that staff person being able to attend the advisory board meeting if their schedule permits it.
Okay, let's do that then.
Okay.
Because they would be on the clock, right?
Well,
Essentially.
yeah, not just that for that reason, but yes, that would be a factor, I'm sure. And then like, what is the ask? So the more pointed it can be as far as, hey, we desire these things, to have better information or knowledge or data regarding these challenges or issues or what have you.
Okay, well,
That'd be helpful.
let me draft the letter as best as I can understand. Send it out to you guys, and you guys can kind of add, subtract, give me other ideas so we can, basically, it'll be points I think that we want would want her to address. Okay. All right. Anything else on that?
I mean, while we're there, protected classes, is there anything else that you think should be added to that as a group?
Well, I'm gonna talk to her about the fact that we've been discussing a homeless Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
That might include the following elements that we had talked about. Mobility, accessibility, freedom of movement, public space use, public services. Is there a sense that there denial of those particular rights is that discriminatory? Because that's where we would come in. At least that's my sense.
Mhm.
Okay, but let me think about it and put it into words, and I'll send that out to you guys.
Okay.
All right. Next, which actually is kind of contiguous with this, public outreach strategies. So, Aaron, I guess ever since this committee existed, we've talked about how do we get the word out to the public, and I know that Kevin has spoken about community organizations perhaps benefiting and even wanting us to be able to talk with them about what we could do, what we're about. There have been some roadblocks to that. So one of the things that we talked about was having an open invitation for community organizations. How do we get them? How do we talk to them? What's the best way? Do we go to them? There seems to be some roadblocks to that. Do we have them come to us in here? Maybe. And how exactly do we do that? So I think that's probably what we talked about last week when we got together. Any thoughts about this, or any thoughts about the whole public relations thing, about how we should approach this?
Well, we need to develop a product to be able to showcase or present to people. Would that be like a PowerPoint or?
I think there are, I'm not sure if it got passed out the last meeting or not, but I believe we still have some additional sort of, I guess flyers or marketing material to kind of help express sort of the roles of the Human Relations Commission. So I can also try to see about getting some of that to you all. And again, this was from, I think, 2-3 years ago. So if you feel like, hey, based on some of the restructuring or focus connected to the strategic plan, here's how this needs to be updated. We can try to see who the city attorney's office, if they have a budget for it, and go from there, I guess, to see if there can be some updated marketing materials to kind of help you all kind of accomplish and you all's goals and close whatever gaps you all believe needs to be closed by doing outreach.
Do we have any type of budget or anything, or?
There is some type of a small budget. I don't know what the specific number is. And how to specifically, there were some requirements before based on some grants through HUD I don't know the details. The city attorney's office kind of handles that. If I go through some of my older emails, I probably can find some information, or I probably can reach out to the city attorney's office and kind of get some updated information on behalf of that to see what a budget looks like and how to go about using that, what's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The word of grants this year have changed dramatically. So I'm not sure what additional restrictions to advance what causes are considered to be permitted these days.
What are y'all thinking?
Well, just to let you know, not more than two of us can't go to a meeting or becomes open records issues, and we can't speak on behalf of the commission. So there's a whole bunch of issues about us going out and presenting, and who we speak to, needs to be approved, and it's just real hard to do outreach on behalf of us, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so then there was the idea of, well, if we can't go out there, can we have them come here? And part of that discussion looked at, okay, so who would we invite? What cohort? And would anybody be offended if we didn't invite them? And they felt as if they should be included on the list, kind of thing. My thought was, if they came and said, hey, why didn't we get invited? I said, sorry, not that we didn't want to. We have limited space in our brains, so we just didn't think of you at the time. But if you'd like to come and talk to us, that would be great. So, the idea of having them come here in order to have an exchange of information, I think, and we still do it as part of this particular meeting. It wouldn't be having public comments of someone coming in for 5 minutes and turning them off. It would actually come here to do something a little bit more educational, both for us and also to have an exchange.
It still brings an issue, though. They have to be vetted by the city if they come to give a formal presentation, don't they?
Well, I think, and I don't want to jump ahead here, but I think based on the agenda item number 5, as far as discussion pertaining to potential annual goals, my way of thinking, just sort of strategically, I think if you all decide, hey, over the next year, here's what we kind of want to focus in on, I think that might help sort of give better credence to who you want invited to some of the upcoming meetings to kind of meet that annual goal of you all. So I think that's another way you can go about approaching it. So if those questions do arise surrounding why wasn't this organization or this organization invited, it can be, you're in the parking lot for now kind of a thing, as we have this goal. So we thought it was priority to invite these organizations because we're trying to accomplish these annual goals. So it's not that anybody was excluded. It's just based on our mission for this year. It's trying to get into the second year of this new advisory board. Here's some of the goals and things we want to try to start to get accomplished so we can start to have some metrics that's in alignment with the city commission goals, city strategic plan, et cetera.
Well, that recognizes who we would choose to prioritize to invite.
Exactly.
But there are still groups that may not pass vetting by the city.
I'm not sure what that might look like. I guess I don't.
Well, I'm going off of information that I thought I heard you say. Maybe I'm correct. I thought you were concerned that there might be cities that don't align with city priorities.
I believe based on a conversation we had about sort of inviting certain organizations, I want to make sure that it doesn't appear for some type of a bias that some organizations are getting some preferential treatment that's not necessarily in alignment with the goals of the Human Relations Commission. But yeah, I don't know of any history with the city that says a certain group can't be in attendance at an advisory board.
Okay.
So I don't know of that history at all.
Okay.
And is there a time limit to the public comment? Is there any flex on that?
I could double check into that, but I think to what chairperson was saying, if it's sort of part of the overall agenda where there's an exchange happening, as far as they're here to help better inform versus a public comment. So if it's an agenda item, I think you probably can spend whatever time you need to on that agenda item if that person's here almost in a expert capacity as a community organization, community member, whatever lived experiences. I would think that would be a little different than a public comment.
So that's where they would have to be vetted if they came in here to have a discussion with us.
There's a difference between if they come for public comment. Anybody can come for
Right,
public
right, right.
comment. Nobody can say anything, and
Are
we
are
can't
allowed to
vet
go back and
those.
forth with them on public comment?
I don't think so.
Yeah, typically no on public comment. I think the advisory boards are almost like an extension of how the city commission execute their agenda. And then when it comes to public comment, city commissioners as a practice do not go back and forth with people making public comment. It's their chance to kind of talk to the community and then take it under advisement, if you will.
But is there any written regulations that we can't respond to them?
Not that I know of offhand, but I do know once you start as a practice, start engaging in certain practices that differ, it does open the door for what may look like preferential treatment. Yeah. So I want to proceed with caution with that, if that
Right.
makes sense. Yeah.
This seems like a gray area. It's not written that we can't respond back.
I'm
We're
not
not-
sure
we're
if
not-
it is or not, but I know sometimes a practice is just as relevant and meaningful as a policy, if you will. So just because something is not written doesn't mean that it's basically not a policy, if that makes sense.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but
Yeah,
you're not breaking a rule technically. If that's it, if it's not written.
that becomes a legal argument, so that's beyond my, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about I like the whole idea of developing some annual goals in order to create a structure for who we can invite, who we would, not who we could, but who we would want to invite. So like this whole issue of the rights of the unhoused. If that, we make that one of our annual potential, annual goals of looking at that issue, then there's all sorts of organizations that we could invite here in order to assist us with our approaches and how we want to do this, which is pretty good. I know I can back when Ferris had suggested, we should talk about annual goals. And I'm thinking, oh, this is the first that I've heard about annual goals. So I know that last year we didn't, but we were so new at that particular time. I would want us to think about what is it within this group that we would like to have accomplished or at least looked at, be on the way of looking at, within the next year, what areas. You certainly brought up the one about the unhoused. And I think that's a great one for us to look at, and we can certainly make that one. Are there any others, or is this something that you guys want to think about in terms of areas that we need to approach or could approach? Aaron, do you have any specific areas that you are really interested in terms of like your work?
Disabilities is at the top of it. LGBTQA is also, I've done a lot of work there.
When you say disabilities, you mean like disability rights?
Disability rights, yeah, I mean, and you saw that several of those complaints were disability based, right? So I think there's probably a good need for something related to that.
Okay. In your experience, are they still being discriminated against even with the current laws that we have on book to kind of supposedly mitigate discrimination against those who are disabled, both physically or mentally handicapped?
It's an interesting question. Well, I think at least half of those were complaints of potential discrimination for disability
Right.
status, so I think that's probably a yes. Maybe bigger in the top of my mind about what, the potential population is facing is, lack of resources, especially when it comes to dually diagnosed. So if you have a disability, intellectual disability and mental health, it gets really tricky and people fall through the cracks, but that's not necessarily a rights issue here. See what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's definitely a need.
Okay. Thoughts about that?
I think she's right. The State Disability Resource Council recently did a statewide survey, and they didn't even give you the option of having a dual diagnosis. You had to pick one or the other, which I thought was really strange in this day and age. Do you think? I know you're new to the commission, but do you think we need to do education? We need stronger legislation in Lawrence. What do you think we need in our community?
I'd have to think about that for a little bit to really wrap my mind around that. My work primarily is with enforcing state regulations on people providing those services. But there's a whole lot of people with disabilities that aren't in services, so to speak, right? And I think I'd have to consider that population as well. And I suspect that a lot of those folks are, falling through a whole lot of cracks, and they're being imprisoned more frequently than other people, than other groups and populations. Like I hear a lot about that, and they come into state funding through crisis. And a lot of that is based on housing, inability to get housing. So I think it's potential, but I couldn't speak super intelligently about that without, my scope is limited to those who are already receiving services.
All right.
Gotcha. Okay. So why don't we do that? Why don't we, we just brought this up today, but why don't we choose a couple of goals during our next meeting? People can pick goals. We could discuss, and then we can choose one or two as what we would like to tackle for the next year. Not that we would finish it, but at least what we'd want to address. And again, that would allow us to be able to do some community invitations as necessary.
Do we have some examples of past goals the committee has worked on?
Yes, I think I have some of those. But before I jump to that, thought just came to mind. I know Kalina had sent out an email, I think, inquiring about goals. So I think if you all, for whatever goals you all may come up with, if you want to respond back to that, we can try to help compile those. And then when we meet with the
Right.
chair and vice chairperson to kind of put together the next agenda, we can just kind of have a list so we can try to go about it that way. But as it relates to Chairperson Norris, related to your question, or Commissioner Norris, about previous goals. So just some of the history. I think this advisory board in its current state, it was restructured. So been about a year and some change, but then I think it went almost like a year or so without any meetings. And I think even the first few meetings, I think you all had scheduled for quarterly meetings. And I think now it's bi-monthly.
Yeah.
So there's been some gaps in meeting. So we're talking about 4 years or so ago, I think, about the advisory boards. They did develop some sort of annual goals that was trying to be in alignment with the city strategic plan at that point. I could try to comb through the archives and try to find some examples of some of the things that they were working on. But I remember it was like 3 key categories. And one was there was a work group that was tasked with coming up with suggestions for updating Chapter 10, this city ordinance that kind of helped governs this advisory board. There was one surrounding programming. So kind of again, what you all are discussing, like what are some programs that can be put in place to kind of help create better visibility of this advisory board? And it was a third one that I don't quite recall what that work group was designed to address. So yes, there were some examples in the past, like a few years back.
What's the difference between a work group and a subcommittee?
I think it's interchangeable. It's been utilized.
I thought I found a loophole.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Ferris.
No problem.
So, yeah, well, why don't we send our thoughts for potential annual goals to Kalina, and during the pre-meeting that Kevin and I have with Kalina and Ferris, we'll put that together and discuss that at the next meeting. Any other discussion on that? All right. So our next is just the calendar. Those are the tentatively scheduled meetings for next year: February 16th, April 20th, June 15th. All at, well, that's just for the next 6 months or so. Yeah. It's because it's every 2 months, and that's at 6 o'clock. So we have this room reserved during those times?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Is there anything we want to throw on the agenda for next meeting?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything we want to put on the agenda for next meeting additionally?
You let me know.
Yeah. I'm still trying to grasp exactly what we can do.
And I
It's
will.
very broad, but
Oh, I was just going to say, and if yeah, if anybody ever have any like additional questions where it's like, hey, you know, Ferris, I got some questions for you. We can probably try to find some time to connect as well. I'll try to, even though we have a policy in place and things about, you know, the amount of time, but I'll make myself as available as possible as far as like questions. Some questions probably are deserve a quicker answer or, you know, a more detailed discussion that maybe it's not this forum don't provide the opportunity to have such discussion. So if there's ever any questions or ideas or thoughts and you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to kind of accommodate. So yes.
Is it time to adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
second.
All right, let's do it.
So you all adjourned?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
we will adjourn.
Okay. 24.